Welcome to the Mariah Jean Fit YouTube channel. I'm Coach Mariah. Make sure you like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos as much as possible so we can reach a broader audience. We appreciate your support and enjoy the video. Hi guys, Coach Mariah here with the Fit Minds podcast on Spotify and on YouTube, the vlog that we have going. Today we have the founder and national head judge, Stu O'Brien, with us here today. And we're going to talk about NBA as a federation and a couple of extra little things about bodybuilding because we always like to touch on those. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
Now you're on a couch this time because the other times
Nice
you're
and
obviously in a Zoom call and so you get to relax in the aircon.
Yeah.
We've had some food, so we're nice and geared up and ready to go. So, Stu, how long, let's start off with obviously, because we want to talk to listeners from a perspective of not knowing about NBA, even if you already do know about NBA, but how long has NBA been established?
So we've been going just over 5 years off the top of my head.
Yep.
So 2018 we started.
Mm-hmm.
4 of us set up NBA. We were all involved in a different federation and decided to move on and do our own thing. So 2018 we started. Got
things going then. So it's obviously relatively a young federation because weirdly enough, when I competed with NBA, I had this idea that you guys have been around for a long time, but that's only a year after I started competing.
Yeah.
So
as a federation we're young, but the 4 of us that started us had been around the sport for a long time with the previous federation. So, and especially in Queensland, there was kind of just a flow on of, we had the same crew around us, a lot of things transferred over. So in Queensland especially, it kind of just feels like we've been around forever, but where some of the other states, it definitely feels a lot newer there.
Yep. And obviously too, because I know that in previous interviews you talked about how you went through the whole COVID era as well, because we had that pause button on bodybuilding for was it one and a half years or something?
So there was the first season where every show got cancelled, which was fun. We were about 6 weeks out from memory and had to make the decision.
Wow.
We were the first to actually make that decision and geez, it was hard.
That
was as hard a decision I ever made about anything to do with the federation was, deciding that, and that was at the start. We didn't know what was going on. It was just this big scary thing that the media was pumping out to be.
It was a crazy time.
And,
it was a really crazy
times.
time.
And we sort of decided early that, things didn't look good. So we let people know as soon as we could that we were cancelling. And then, a few others were trying to say they were still going to run a show. And eventually everyone ended up cancelling.
Had to put it in the bin because legally we really didn't have any grounds to stand on to keep going with the shows, which was... if you think about it now, quite heartbreaking for the competitors as well because they were all so hyped up and it saw the death of actually numerous federations.
A lot of competitors that had registered for that season have never come back.
Wow, because it was just too much.
They got so close, totally heartbroken, spent 18 months doing whatever they did, turned their life upside down and, they haven't come back yet.
Haven't recovered.
So, definitely very hard for the sport that whole time.
I think if you made it out of that particular phase as a federation, as a coach, as a competitor, I think that shows your resilience as well because you've not only come out of the COVID space, but you've also built and grown since then.
Yeah.
And I think for you as well, you realise that if you just stuck around and you just kept going, that, things would pay off.
Especially in that second season, lockdowns finished and then restarted again and we were in and out of lockdowns. Queensland, we were lucky that we didn't really have many, but other states were worse. So New South Wales and Victoria, we ran shows that season where, everyone first started back out. We ran shows with 20 competitors.
Yeah, wow.
But,
it was the principle of doing it anyway, though, like getting in and getting it done and making it available for people. And, it's not like you were running at a point where you were profiting a lot, but it was the principle, I think, behind it.
Yeah, and I would have hated to have to call those 20 people and say, we're allowed to run a show, but
we're not going to.
We're not going to because, we're just not making enough money out of it. Like, it just wouldn't have felt right. It's, not why we do what we do. So
you're obviously involved because of your love of bodybuilding, not because of what you can get out of it, not financial gain or anything like that.
No, definitely. So.
That's good. That's really good to hear because I just don't know. It was a year before I started competing. Sorry, I'm dyslexic with years. I remember my first show though, because I remember you reached out to my coach and you're like, she's got, this great physique, and I was fried. Yeah. I couldn't even do a second show, let alone a first. And I had no idea because you were such a young federation back then that I had only ever heard of one. And I think that's the case for a lot of people, is they've only had exposure to one federation and not been able to branch out yet. So obviously, second question, now we kind of know the background of how you were established, and I think you've kind of half answered this. Why did you form NBA? Like, what goes on inside your mind for you to go, I'm going to start a bodybuilding federation, a whole thing?
Yeah. So, originally the four of us that started NBA were all involved with another federation. Mm-hmm. That federation sold, so the owner...
Was that A and B? Yeah. Because I actually found this out from another podcast and I was like, oh, that's how this happened. Yeah.
Yeah, so the owner sold to someone else.
Sure.
The new owner just sort of changed the direction slightly and we weren't comfortable with the way it was changing. It just didn't feel right, didn't sit right with us. So, we decided, there was two options, either leave and walk away and just become spectators or go and do our own thing, which we can do what we think's right.
Aren't you glad you did that?
Yeah.
Aren't you glad you kept going with it? Because now look at you, you're not a federation that's, even though you're young and that, the shows are actually getting bigger and bigger and bigger each season, you're not a federation that is like, I don't know. It's now I actually think you've gained the respect that you deserve from anyone who's ever competed with you has experienced that.
So we've built it from the start on doing things right by you guys, the athletes, not what makes the most money, not what, what's the coolest. It's about what's right for the athletes, the sport. They're the most important things, holding true to what the sport was about 30 years ago, keeping those traditional elements involved, but also evolving to fit what's new as well within, making it fair and ethical.
That's fantastic. So obviously all of your morals and values are all in the right place. And I think that's pretty much what bodybuilding has to remain like though, because if it becomes too business oriented, you're going in a different direction that is actually even going to be good for your competitors. It's like, at the end of the day, you're there for the competitors, you're there for the show. And I think most people would like to believe, even as a coach, that, people think bodybuilding and competition prep is very lucrative. It can be, but at the same time, it's also incredibly taxing. It takes a lot out of you, and you have to be very passionate about bodybuilding to remain in that space in a very true and honest manner. So that's good to know because, I think sometimes it's all very grey for a lot of people as to the why behind and where you came from. And when you have these pieces put together, you can understand the history of and where you're going as well. So what would you say separates you from other federations? It's actually one of the biggest questions I get. It's like, what's the difference between, ICN, NBA, Miss Fitness, IMBA, IFBB, the existence of obviously smaller federations here and there that, I think there's like Nat Body is another one that's come about recently. Obviously NABBA as well. There's, untested, tested federations, but I just want to know what the major differences are between you and obviously tested federations would be for you and I, we would know that. Sorry, untested federations, we would know that difference. But firstly, what's the difference between you and untested federations? And then secondly, what's the difference between, NBA and, other natural federations?
Yeah. So, firstly, going back to why we set up and why, our biggest difference is we're doing it for you guys or for the athletes setting things up that's fair, ethical, and good platform to represent yourselves on. So we've done things like, I've got a judging software where all 5 judges or 7 judges actually have computers in front of them. It's not passing sheets of paper around. Everyone scores their scores individually. It's tabulated by the computer.
Yeah, wow.
So that removes any potential issues there.
Sure.
Which happens in some shows. So, that's probably the first and foremost. We do ensure that we stick to the criteria there with judging. It's not a popularity contest. It's not who's going to be the most marketable for us. It is sticking to that criteria, and that is a big way of making sure that happens. So, it's put a procedure in place to make sure that happens.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So on top of that, the other main ones that that people come back to us saying they like that we do that, every single NBA show is tested. Every overall winner at every show is tested, no matter what, tested to the wider protocols. And then random testing on top of that. So, some federations will test 3 or 4 people at their nationals. Some will test 50 at their nationals, but they'll only test at one show and not others.
Yes.
And that allows people to pick and choose which shows they're going to do.
Dodge things.
If you know that that's the way they do things, then you can dodge it and turn up to certain shows or not.
I've weirdly enough seen that too, that we're like, people will actually, that I think that we all kind of might have known, and that's the thing, you can't speculate because you need a test. And that's what I've seen a lot of, is a lot of speculation in the industry of, natty competitors who aren't natty, and a lot of people talk about it, but I'm very careful to, number one, point the finger or point people out if you don't have proof, because you just can't, even though you think you just can't.
Yeah.
But the other aspect of it is that, if you do see people avoiding NBA as a federation and just doing every other natural federation that you could think of, to me, I'm like, that's interesting to see that. And I've actually had people talk to me about that and go, do you think they avoided NBA because NBA is so strict with their testing? Which is actually a really positive reflection on you to go, cool, people actually know that if you do this, you will get caught. In fact, they will try to catch you.
Yeah. So, and that's definitely a big separating factor. We're not pushing it under the table saying we know it happens and we don't care. We're actually saying,
addressing it.
We're addressing it, and we're saying, if you want to do that, there's IFBB, there's NABA, there's WBFF, there's those feds. Go do it. Have fun there. Why would you compete against the naturals while using if you've got a platform that you can do it?
I think the unfortunate thing too is, and like anything in life, is that we like to assume that most people are honest and true and everything like that. But people steal, people lie. It's in bodybuilding, there's nothing stopping people from doing that, right? And much of it is that you have to be a good person. You actually have to have that moral fibre. And I've seen some instances that have been very heartbreaking where even people have openly said that they are PED users, competed naturally and won, and no one's done anything about it. Not in your feds, but in your shows and your fed. But it is good to see someone not just cracking down a little bit, but like, this is just not tolerated at all, and we will do everything we can, even if it's costly, because that's been a big part of the feedback is, it's expensive to test competitors. I don't think that is a justification not to test overall winners, like, okay, it's costly, but it's also costly for these competitors to compete against one another. So how do you go about, testing kits and that being pricey? Is there like a bulk buy thing that you do, or?
The tests themselves, if you do 1 or 100, they're the same price. So, it's just, we've budgeted in as part of our budget that, your membership actually pays for your testing.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's good.
Every bodybuilding federation charges a membership to be a member of the federation.
And what does the membership get you? That's what I always wonder is what am I paying for here? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And with us, part of that is it pays for the testing.
Good. Okay.
It also, helps us pay for insurance. It helps us pay for our
all
website,
all
those overheads. There are a lot of things there that it does cover, but you as the athlete, and we also actually give you a decent bag of merchandise that people actually use. So, every member gets that, as well as it's what pays for our testing pool. So, that's what we've budgeted. That's what happens. Membership isn't just going to the guys who started the federation for them to make money to sit and watch. It's actually used for, making the federation better.
I like that, because I think often you see all the fees and you see that, there's registration fees and it does add up. Like I think my last comp, because I coach myself, right? $6,000, $6,000 in total on, photo shoot. I'm including photo shoots and tan hair and makeup. This is not just, you can do it on the cheap if you want to, but it's still going to cost at minimum, $600 to $1,000 just to go in a show, just the registration, the membership, everything like that. So that's good to know. And obviously from a perspective of divisions and categories, because I don't want to go on you could go on forever about what are the differences between what you look for from each division, but what do you think are the major differences? Because I think I know what they are. I've seen them enough, and I've seen enough of your shows to kind of go, cool, that they really do like that. What do you think are the major differences from as far as what you're looking for in competitors, so that you're not the same as other feds?
So, we've started out, I'll talk mostly about the women's divisions first.
Because that's probably where there's the most kind of, variance,
So the guys' divisions most fall into pretty obvious. But in the women's divisions, swimsuit is the smallest and softest. And then as we moved up to bikini, fitness, sports model, fitness, figure international, figure, each step along the line gets both more muscle and better condition. And that's, it's not perfectly linear, but it's, essentially that's how the categories work.
You would hope that it would be progressional, so it does avoid confusion, because if you are, 1 year awarding a winner that, for example, in sports that has this massive back, and the next winner you're giving it to this, small back, tiny waist girl, then you've got far too much variance, which, as we know, for the crowd can create a lot of confusion, upset, especially with coaches as well. It's like, what are we doing here? What are we marking towards for our own competitors? How can we even head there if we have this constant up and down between categories? The other thing I would say too is that, with the likes of wellness being this new division, which there's obviously a bit of hype around, and hopefully we get a little bit more, because I personally love the look of wellness. As a taller girl, I could probably not really be able to do that as successfully, but with wellness, it's like, it kind of slots somewhere in there between, I'm going to say like fitness and figure, but bigger legs and probably not as conditioned as figure. So I think it has its own natural place in there too. And So, are you looking to build that up a little bit more? Because we talked about it before. Like, is wellness the next thing?
Wellness is, in the women's division, definitely the next one that will grow. What we've decided to do, so we've set wellness up. We've looked at where it came from with IFBB. The European culture is what started it.
Correct.
It's that disproportionate lower body to upper body. So some federations have looked at it as bikini girls with that disproportion, which to me just doesn't sit right. It's too soft for what the category is. And essentially you end up with someone who's got bigger legs just because they're not lean enough.
It looks like they're half baked. It looks like they're not quite finished yet. It's like a cake that's not, put that back in the oven.
We've set it, somewhere between sports and fitness on the muscularity level.
Nice,
And then the condition of fitness to even push in towards figure.
Sure.
So, you want to be lean enough that we know the disproportion
is not body fat.
It's muscle, not fat. And that's the big big thing. Once we get enough competitors that fit that criteria, then the division will grow.
I think too, you know, and I'm just going to say here to the ladies out there, you know, you can't now you can't rely on you having a fat butt to be able to do wellness, because, you know, some people do genetically store a lot more body fat in their rear, and so they might be thinking, cool, now I can do wellness. But it's like, if you cut back and you've got no glutes underneath there, you've got a problem in a bodybuilding show. So I like that you do that, because I have seen a little bit of that, even though it is new in the natty world, and even in the non-natty world, some of the wellness competitors coming through are a little bit, I would say, too thick in the wrong ways in the lower half. So, or too watery, you know, they're really carving them up, and they've got these legs that just have no definition whatsoever. And I think that that's where we're starting to lose the look already. So that's good to hear. And on that note too, with your figure, because I like to talk about female categories, obviously, because, you know, we've talked about the boys on the other podcasts. With figure as well, I've noticed from your marking criteria with figure, it's really nice and refreshing to see. And this wasn't even from my own bias from the double pro win that I went through in, you know, 2021. It's nice to see that you look for a fuller, more muscular female that doesn't trump this really, you know, dick skin lean look, that then sacrifices size and symmetry and that graciousness that has also sometimes been lost in figure. So, explain that a bit more too, so that the girls know that.
Going back to what we said about each division having that linear growth in both muscle and condition. We want figure girls lean, but you want to have enough muscle to show that condition properly. If you get too lean for your amount of muscle, you're in the wrong category. You know, if you have enough muscle to be a fitness girl, but you get figure lean, you should have just not got quite as lean and stayed in fitness.
Because there is such a thing as taking conditioning too far.
Definitely. For, you know, the only category that you can't, for women, that you can't take conditioning too far is women's bodybuilding.
Correct.
Or women's physique, depending on what the federation calls it.
Sure.
Because that we want as much muscle and as lean as possible while still being natural.
And if you think about it too, it's kind of like, well, let's really do the comparison across male to female categories and divisions, even though you probably can't do that. But, you know, women's physique or women's bodybuilding, men's bodybuilding, and then you've got obviously women's figure. I would liken that, and it should be like men's classic with the class that comes with it as well, because, you know, I'm not talking about figure international, not figure symmetry. I'm talking about the flow and that almost that touch on it that is creative, which you see with classic physique.
And figure, you know, with the muscularity poses, should still be about symmetry.
Sure,
A front double bis isn't who's got the best biceps only. You know, it's the top to bottom, how the whole package looks in that pose. Every single pose, we're looking at you from toe to nose, you know, and it's the package of the best combination of muscularity, symmetry, condition, and how you present
and flow. Absolutely. Because I think that's been something I've seen and gotten quite frustrated with in marking criteria in the past, and I do mean in reference to other shows, is that, you know, a person might be particularly conditioned. They might have very impressive conditioning and they've got, you know, they've got this crazy big back or like amazing big glutes, and then they end up winning because they have this almost like a it's a novelty. It's like this person has a, you know, it's like the big banana in Australia. Like, it's like putting that on a pedestal and going, this is awesome, but great, you've got a big banana, you've got a big back, but do you have anything else? And their posing might not be very good, especially in figure category. You know, the amount of figure competitors we see posing like scarecrows, posing like dinosaurs, and not being corrected, or certainly not, you know, being marked appropriately. Some of them aren't even getting, you know, release massage done to get into the poses properly. So do you think that's a huge component of it too? It's like that person might have good structure, good conditioning, but there's something off about the posing, and there's also probably something off about the proportions as well.
Definitely.
A big part to play.
So, and it's the best total package.
Correct.
All of them, you know, we don't go and score each of those individually. Every pose is the best total package of that.
Yes.
So, you don't get a point for who's got the best condition, a point for who's got the best symmetry, and a point for who's got the best muscle. It's the best total package in every pose, but it needs to be the total package, not a conditioning show, not a muscle show. It's a bodybuilding show.
Yeah, so it's almost like try to get as close as possible in every, and that it makes logical sense. Get to the best of every type of marking criteria that you can, and then then that's how it works. Don't just focus on how lean can I get, how jacked can I get in my back, that type of stuff. Where it's unfortunately that's not going to win you a show. Cool. So that's good to know because, and I think it would obviously apply to the male categories as well. It's we're not just looking for the dude with the biggest delts. It's the
in the
proportions.
male categories, the best example of it is men's physique to classic physique. A lot of shows do. So men's physique will do muscularity poses. And as soon as you do that, you end up getting a bodybuilder in board shorts winning, not a men's physique competitor. They're two different structures. If you've got 5 muscularity poses plus 4 quarter turns, the judges are seeing 9 poses. The guy who wins the 5 muscularity ones is going to beat the guy who wins the 4 quarter turns. And
it's like symmetry goes out the window. Exactly.
So it's the structure of physique goes out the window and you end up with a bodybuilder in board shorts.
And I've seen a bit of that too, is that I think that there's too much of this hybrid marking going on where it's like we're adding in all these extra divisions and all this crazy shit is happening because we're trying to, be diverse in bodybuilding. And this is as a big general umbrella as well, right? But it's like, well, men's physique, I would liken that to, in a sense of it is just symmetry and it should be just symmetry, women's figure international. It's like, if you actually look at these categories, they have their place and purpose and they should remain that way because otherwise you then get this blending happening. And the blending is what pisses people off because then it's like, well, how did he win that and that? It's like, no, they should be clearly in this category or division in that one as well. There are obviously, and I talk about this genetic anomalies and chameleons, right? It's like there are chameleons that can go across divisions, but what we're looking at probably 1 in 50, like it's...
and some people will fit between 2, but never 3.
No.
You
wouldn't see me in bikini, girls.
It shouldn't be possible for you to do bikini, sports, fitness, figure, and women's physique. You can do figure and figure international. Even if you tried to do fitness, it wouldn't work.
I like to as well that you because I know you've received a few messages from my girls who've gone, look, I want to go into categories that aren't what I fit into and what do you think? And you've basically been honest with them instead of going, just do it. You've gone, no, don't do that division. That doesn't suit you, which can break some people's hearts because they think, especially with things like wellness coming up, everyone wants to jump on the wellness bandwagon. And I've got a lot of clients who come to me, girls who go, I want to do wellness. I'm like, your legs are small. You have 4 or 5 years of growing before that's even a thing. I wouldn't even do wellness because my legs are just not big enough for that. So what I like is that I've seen that happen with you where you've gone, no, stick to your division because if you've already done pretty well in it, you can only do better in that and just try to do that.
And I'd prefer to have that conversation and break your heart as such before the show. Much easier to have that conversation
than on the day
via message than on the day you get up there, you think you're amazing and you're stuck in the corner because you're in the wrong division and that would feel absolutely terrible.
I've seen that happen too with even my own competitors, even other coaches' competitors, which we really can't say much about. We can't go in and go, hey mate, you're in the wrong division. Even if they've been suggested to do so. The amount of girls who steer away from figure because there's a stigma attached to competing in figure. It's like, I don't want to do the muscularity poses. And I would come back at them and say, well, I don't want to do the sports poses. We're not boys. We're not men. We're not bulky. We're just, slightly more muscular. And if anything, I think it's more competitive. It's harder. This shit is really hard to do figure. So, we could go on for days about that. We'll get to the next question though, because it's such a big topic in bodybuilding because it is so subjective. We've got to address how do you remove as much of that as possible. And that's actually one of my favourite things about NBA is that the laptop thing with the point scoring. I didn't know that until the day I competed. And since then, I've been in love with getting my competitors into NBA because of that, because there's 7 or 8 judges all spaced apart, you know, and that leads me into my next question, because it's on here as well. It's like, you know, the judging, can you please explain the judging criteria?
Yeah.
You know, how many judges are on the panel? What's that all look like? And how do you make it fair?
Yep. So straight up, we have minimum 5 judges, up to 7. Generally, we'll also have a person who's called the tabulator. So their job is to sit at the computer that
That's the 8th person.
and makes the, you know, so they're not actually judging, they're just checking that everything adds up. So, you know, then we can have a couple of trainee judges as well. So, you know, there might be 10 people across the table. So up to 7 of them actually judging. The things we do to make it fair, firstly, we've got that computer system. So, you know, if any one judge was to do, you know, just judge a division badly, we'll say, be it just they're judging it badly for any particular reason, it stands out like dog's balls on that. You know, it just like 5 judges have got one and then this one judge is completely different. It's really obvious. So I can then go, okay, that judge needs more training, or is there another reason behind it?
Yeah.
You know, so straight away we're ruling out that people can't do dodgy things. You know, and it does happen, unfortunately. So we've stopped that. We also do not let any coaches judge their own clients at all, full stop, no questions. So, you know, if you come to me and say, can I judge the show? I'm going to say, sorry, like, you know, you're too busy backstage, go look after your clients.
I wouldn't want to anyway. I wouldn't want to judge my girls, because I think, weirdly enough, I think I would be, particularly ones that I'm like, I know you look incredible, and the ones I know that probably need to work a bit harder, I would be like, this is on you, buddy. Like,
and like, I've been on judging panels where coaches were allowed on the panel, you know, before I was a head judge, etc. Quite often coaches are actually harder on their clients than, you know, than anyone else. That's still not fair.
Exactly. Because you can't look at it, you can't not be biased with somebody that you've stared at for 20 or 30 weeks. Like, you know, you've got them under a microscope already, and then you put them under a microscope next to other people, and obviously it would favour you to have them win anyway. So it could go too bad either way. Like it would really be a bit too much. So that's good to hear, because I knew that was a big thing, was not being able to, you know, judge your own clients, which I really appreciate. And I didn't realise there was that, you know, getting rid of the odd score that just isn't right, because I wondered how that worked. Is that, you know, how do you get 6 to 7 people to be on the same page? And it would be based on what you've taught them that the criteria is for each division. So
so we go through, for any new judge to start as a judge, they generally, I'll first sit at another federation show with them in the crowd, and we'll judge together. And I'll talk through with them. I'll get an understanding of how they're trying to break things down. I'll explain how I would judge it. If I can see that person's on a good wavelength and actually does get it, then they'd progress to being a trainee judge. So a trainee judge sits on the table, scores like a judge, talks to all the other judges, you know, about it, but their scores don't physically count. I then go back after the show and look at their scores and go, they did a good job, or they need a lot more work. If they've had 2 shows in a row where they've done well and been very close to, you know, what the rest of the panel thinks, they then become a judge, a fully fledged judge.
So it's almost like they've got to pass a criteria, because I have seen sometimes in different feds that, you know, you might have the same judges over and over again for each state. You know, they'll be different from state to state. But then it's like those judges, I've noticed as well, and sometimes they don't actually know what they're marking, you know, but they still mark anyway. And I'm like, oh, that's a bit concerning. So it's good to hear that they almost have to pass, you know, judging school before they can become a judge. And also I like that you obviously change up your judges a little bit here and there too. It's not, you know, the same 3 people or 4 people turning up every single season, you know, that have been judging the same physiques for, you know, the last 10 years, because you never know. You might have one judge that might have this vendetta against a particular competitor that shows up and just goes, nah, not again.
And, if that were to happen, it's going to stand out.
Yeah.
So, I can control that.
Sanction it. Yeah. That's good. Very good to hear. I think we've talked about judging and obviously what's fair and with that. And I think you're doing the best job possible of getting judging to be fair. Yeah. Because let's be honest, it's difficult when it's opinion-based, isn't it?
It's an opinion-based sport. It's also a very small niche industry.
Yeah. Especially natty competitors. Yeah.
Everyone knows everyone. And that's why I draw the line at if someone has a financial or physical or family relationship.
Sure.
So, you can't judge your wife, you can't judge your partner, you can't judge anyone who pays you to be your posing coach, prep coach, even your boss at work, because there is a relationship there that could create bias.
Would it make it hard then for when coaches compete themselves, because other coaches would be marking them potentially and maybe be competitive with them?
Yeah, look, and that's it. There's no perfect answer because we're so small.
Yeah.
So
I think we're all pretty respectful, and actually, weirdly enough, most of us actually look up to one another. So it's kind of like we know how hard we're working. Yeah.
If I saw that happening, I can stamp it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm the head judge there. I've put all the steps in place to ensure it's fair. If I see something that's obviously not the way it should be going, I can pull that person out, aside, etc., and say, what's going on?
Don't bring your beef in here.
Etc. So anything of that's going to show up because I've put all those other steps in place before it.
Yeah.
So everyone also actually signs a declaration saying that there's no, no connection.
Yeah.
So, you can't just sneak onto the panel and not tell me that you've got 5 clients and then judge them, and then afterwards I find out.
Or your ex-boyfriend might be on stage and yep.
So everyone declares beforehand. That way, and some coaches who've got, a smaller team, 1 or 2 clients, often make good judges.
Yep.
And if they then declare that, those 2 clients are my clients, I set them off for those divisions.
Nice.
And they physically get off the table, go sit behind it. So they're not sitting next to you going, oh, look at that guy, etc.
Not my client, it's someone else's.
My score doesn't count. Look at this. They're off the table, so no potential influence can be had, and then everything's fair again. Yeah. So...
Yeah, that's good. And look, honestly, from what I've seen from your shows, and there are very little calls that I've seen where I'm like, most of the time, like 99% of the time, I agree with everything that you do. And the only time that I don't is usually my own bias. It's usually my client, me being like, but look at her, look at how amazing she looks. And then when I come down from the high of the show, I can actually sometimes see without that, those rose-colored glasses, which I think we're all bad for as coaches. We have such invested interest in our clients that we know that they've got a winning potential, some of them, but then there's that small difference where we have to put our ego on the back burner and realize that there are going to be times where you might have winning potential, but you're not the winner because of X, Y, Z. So next point and question, I'm going to say, actually I'm going to go to this one first because the other one's interesting, but look, some would say that, and this is probably more me saying, some would say, and that's just me, not anyone saying, I've seen NBA to be kind of like the natty version of IFBB. I've seen so many almost too coincidental things happening in your federation whereby I actually like it because we all kind of have a bit of respect for IFBB, and I mean from an Olympia perspective mostly of... they have this really high standard for bodybuilding. They've been so sharp with marking, or as sharp as possible since it began. And if they're not, they fix it. They get onto it as much as possible. I know some people won't agree with me here, but I think as far as untested federations, IFBB, Olympia is up there, right? So would you agree that that's the direction you want to go in, the natty IFBB?
Yeah, you've made a very good assumption. There's definitely some intent to copy some things from there or mirror some things from there. With the obvious addition of drug testing. So there are a lot of things we do that are essentially the natural version of. So part of being that we set up our own new federation, we were able to take the best from everywhere, bin the stuff we don't like, and mould it into our own show.
Yeah.
So,
and weirdly enough, I've actually seen as a federation, you put a little bit more effort into presentation.
Yeah.
It's like, I've still seen with IFBB sometimes that, they don't usually put a lot more effort into lighting and all that type of stuff because they know they're going to get the quality competitors rock up, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the standard that, an untested fed will have. But one thing I noticed with your show is that you don't care what it costs or certainly what it takes. Your show, you're trying to get everything to be at its absolute best, including the way the show presents, everything from your branding and everything like that too, like the bags that the competitors get. I've noticed that it's polished. Everything is polished.
Yeah.
So that's, even though I say Natty IFBB, I actually mean the best parts of their federation, and then you've actually added, as you said, your own components.
Yeah. So, there's things like the eye walk.
Yeah.
That's where that came from.
Yep.
Diagonal lines on stage, that came from there.
But even your bikini competitors, the way you mark them,
we're still not the size of their bikini, but we do, and that started out as mostly a personal preference of where we thought bikinis should sit, but it's not quite as big or lean as what IFBB is, but the biggest and leanest bikini in the natural federations.
But your bikini pros are more reflective of what I would consider to be bikini pro worthy.
Yeah.
They almost, even seen your bikini pros, and I've been, because I'm, everyone knows I'm not the biggest fan of bikini as a division, because who would be as a figure competitor? Don't get me wrong, I've got bikini competitors, but when it feels too hard to win a bikini division as a coach, and even those who have won overall bikini divisions have gone, I don't know how we did that. Yeah. That's concerning to me, is that how is a bikini division so hard to get right? And even the winners that we see coming through the different federations, they don't look the same. They don't even look anything, similar. And it's shifting too far away from what bikini actually should look like. Yeah. And I've seen with your bikini competitors, they actually have a nice sharpness to their physique. They're not soft and flat. They have enough muscular definition, but these nice tiny waists. And I actually think that's probably something I've seen is your bikini pros and bikini competitors are a very high standard.
Yeah.
So, and you're not marking them down for getting there. You're actually praising them for getting there.
Yeah. No one should be marked down for being too good.
That's what I've seen with bikini and swimsuit sometimes, is like, oh, sorry, you've got your shoulder caps are too impressive for bikini, and it's like, they're still small, they're just defined.
If you're too good for a division, you're in the wrong division.
You shouldn't be. And it's too big or it's too lean or whatever, because that's what it is.
Within the bikini criteria, you still need to look like you train. You still need some shape to your shoulders, just not full separation. You still need shape to your glutes, and you should be starting to get that glute ham tie in. That shows that you trained and you dieted.
Do you think that for bikini competitors as well, you see a lot of these bikini competitors coming through, and I'm sorry to shit talk bikini competitors so much, but they've only trained for a year and then they go in and win an overall title, and it's like, well, do you think that's right?
It's like, freak genetics aside, it's possible with freak genetics, but generally, even bikini, you should have been training a while to be winning overalls.
You need some mature muscle. I think that's one thing, is that you can tell when a bikini competitor who has won an overall has only trained for a year most of the time, because their glutes just aren't quite there. The shoulders are just not quite solid. And even in figure as well, you've seen some girls, freak genetics, that have gone in and won maybe a first or a second or whatever, and it's like, oh yes, they're very impressive, but their muscle bellies aren't very deep. They've got very young muscles. So that's one component I think that needs to be taken in consideration. And you do that, you know. You can see it in your marking. You're like, you're almost there, but give it an extra couple of years. And that's what bodybuilding is putting years into a project. It's not 6 months and I want to do a bikini comp. So I like that. I'm very hard on this too, because as a female coach, you see a lot of this in the industry where people are pumping out competitors quickly as possible, and it's being praised. And I think there should be a line there. Wait your turn, go a bit longer. So Next question. Limited categories and division entries. This is another really nice thing I like about your federation that stands out. Can you explain this concept? Because this is actually one of my favorite things to tell people about NBA. Yeah. I think it's a bragging right because this is what makes, and as I've referenced before, I don't know whether you like me saying this, but to me, you're a boutique federation. Yeah. It's boutique because of the numbers of competitors on stage. It's not, how many people can we fit into a lineup? Yeah. It's, a little bit more condensed. Yeah. So explain the limits on how many different, categories and divisions that you can do and why.
Yeah. So we straight up say that someone can only do 2 consecutive categories.
So that would be like?
So, in the women's categories, you've got swimsuit, bikini, sports model, fitness, figure international, figure. So...
And physique, if anyone wants to do that.
Physique separately. But so a swimsuit competitor could do swimsuit and bikini, but can't do sports model as well. Same, a bikini competitor can step up into sports model and try sports model, but then if they're doing that, they can't do swimsuit.
Sure.
So, and that moves along the line because as we said, every division, every category gets slightly more muscle, slightly more condition. So it's possible to do okay in 2 divisions. Generally, most people will do best in one and not quite as good in the other, but they want to try 2.
Sure.
It's pretty much impossible to do well in 3.
Yeah.
Because the step up in both muscle and condition is too great to jump that far.
Yeah.
So rather than you getting to show day and finding out on the day that one I just paid, $250 to do 2 extra divisions of that category that I don't suit.
And don't place in at all as well.
And don't place and have those bad feelings about, I don't fit in here. We tell you before the show
that you don't fit in.
That you don't fit in there and do these 2.
And it's not your fault either. If you have too much muscle and you go up a division, I've seen this before, girls going, I'm too muscular, I should do figure and not fitness. And I'm like, that's a compliment. Yeah. That's a compliment. Please don't think that's an insult. Please don't try and be less. Yeah. Because it's not that fitness is less, but it's like if you have more, use that. Be staunch, be strong. Yeah. It's impressive. I think it's really impressive. And obviously, the other thing too, I was thinking in that concept is that it eliminates this confusion as well for competitors and coaches because sometimes we just, honestly, I've got a couple in this season, they're hybrids, and I'm like, where the flit do you sit? Like, I'm just like, I don't know. You're kind of half bikini, but you've got a fitness back, and this is a weird combo that we've got going on here, and this is just because we didn't, it was like, I want to compete. I've been training for 3 years. I just want to compete. But it's difficult to then detrain muscle groups fast enough to do that. And also in general, you don't want to take away from someone's awesome back. No. Like, that's pretty cool. So I think in those instances, it's kind of like, because let's face it, women are indecisive. Yep. Part of the reason why we want to be in 3 or 4 categories is because we want to do it all and experience it all. Yep. So by saying no, you're allowed to do 2, and then you can do, you said 2 divisions in each one.
Yeah, so within that 2 divisions.
Sure. Yep. So let's say you could, if you're a first timer, you could do first timers, and let's say you might be able to do, I don't know, your like age division or something like that. We'll use myself as an example, figure international and figure. Yeah. I could do maybe under 30s and in figure muscularity and the opens, the talls, and then in figure international I could do opens and whatever the else, the other division is that I would fit into in that. Or I suppose over 30s, oh my God, I have to do over 30s now. But obviously with, bikini and swimsuit, etc., I like that because you do see, I actually have seen male competitors do this as well, where in some other federations, they've kind of entered into, men's fitness physique and then classic physique. And I'm like, mate, if you don't know where you sit, right, go back to the drawing board and figure it out before you even register, because all that brain fog as well. And then the coach just going, oh, fuck it, I don't know, is not good enough. Yeah.
And then, only doing two divisions within the category. That's so at the end of the day, most people, but the goal is to win the overall. You want to be the best of that category on the day. Yeah. The overall is the winner of every category.
Yeah.
we call it overall for that reason. It's not over some, it's not just the winners of opens, it's overall. And, you know, we want that overall to be a competition. We don't want you to go in as a first timer, do first timers, beginners, an age category and opens, win all of those, and then you're up against one other person in that overall who you've already beaten in opens, but they won a different age category. You know, it takes the excitement out of it. It takes the show aspect out of it.
It's boring.
You know, it becomes boring. And you're seeing the same people 20 times.
It becomes frustrating. Oh, yeah, that too. It becomes frustrating, I think, for other competitors too, because let's say they're up against a genetic freak or whatever, and that genetic freak knows it, and they're in 8 divisions and they just take out first in every single division, and you've got someone who's getting second every single time and they just happen to be in their same divisions. It would feel a little bit, not unfair, it's still fair because technically, they're winning, but it's kind of like, well, she's on stage again, she's going to win again. Like, I like, because the way you structure it, it does actually see that, you know, don't get me wrong, I did win every division I went in when I went into shows, but even in that though, like I felt the competition, do you know what I mean? I was up against very different combinations of women each time. So when I went back on a second or third time, I was like, shit, there's another one, you know, like, oh no, I've got to try and staunch this one. So it wasn't, I didn't already know how I was going to place because each time I went on, I was just as much in fear as what I was the previous time because of those fresh competitors in the different divisions. And, you know, you can see that someone would qualify for a height division and not an age, for example, and that's how I ended up against women who are in their 50s and 60s, you know, because they're in the same height division or weight division, for example. And that, I think, is the fairness and comparison of those particular divisions. Just because you qualify for a division doesn't mean that you should be able to do it and everything else. And then by doing that, yes, some divisions end up smaller because we don't have 10 people doing 8 divisions each. We've got 10 people doing 2 divisions each. So, you know, overall, we might end up with the same number of competitors, but on stage it looks like a smaller show because, you know, people aren't doing the multiple divisions over and over and over again. That was what I was going to say, was one of my questions I actually had lined up, was it's interesting because people say, oh, isn't NBA a smaller show? And I'm like, no, because if you look at the competitor count, even I went to a WBFF show, right? And they told me their competitor count and I was like, that's not a lot. That's not a lot of competitors. I was like, sorry, are you sure? Are you sure? I think it was only like 150 or something, right? Now, for as televised and as big as what they say WBFF is, you know, and don't get me wrong, interesting show to watch. It is definitely different. I wouldn't necessarily classify it as mostly bodybuilding. It's a bit of a hybrid between a fashion show for sure, and it's all about marketability and everything like that. And they know that. They're happy to say that, right? But what I've noticed is that your shows, you go backstage and it's fucking chockers. There's people everywhere. You know, it is, there are literally so many different competitors at your shows, and then on stage you're actually getting a different variety from division to division, which I love seeing because, as you said, you know, if you allow someone in 8, 9 different divisions, you've then got 20 motherfucking competitors on stage together and they're all elbowing each other and they're all pissed off because they're going back on again together. It's like, this is just a circus.
You end up going on stage 8 times and getting looked at for 10 seconds in each of those 8 times.
Because you might be on the end or something,
you know, or go on twice but actually get looked at properly in those 2 times you're on stage. I know what I'd prefer.
And I think too as well, it actually depends on preference, because a lot of people, don't get me wrong, big shows with lots of people on stage feels exciting. Because you are, you know, it feels like being in a race, a 100-metre race. You've got 20 people in that 100-metre race. It scares the shit out of you because there's so many people. There's such a you know, you've got this tiny chance of doing well, right? But it's kind of like if you're in the lottery, wouldn't you rather be in the lottery with less people so it gives you a better chance and it's more fair? But even if it was a terrible comparison, but in bodybuilding, I think that, you know, having these boutique amount, and even IFBB, right? Because people talk about IFBB being up there and the high standard that they uphold for bodybuilding, they don't have a large amount of, and they were getting, some divisions were getting a bit out of hand because of how many bikini girls they get, for example. But in essence, you know, their divisions can be pretty small. Like their figure competitors, they probably only have maybe 5 or 6 girls on stage. Like that's what bodybuilding should be, a fair, direct comparison, and not allowing them, you know, to be division hogs, I guess you could call it. That's really well explained, because that's probably the most common thing that, or misconception about NBA is that, is it a small fed? Are they small shows? No, they are small divisions for a reason. It's actually done on purpose.
Overall in Australia, yes, ICN is the biggest. There's no arguing that.
But biggest by what measure? Do you know? Like
in talking number of competitors. But we're second. There's by a fairly long shot before who would be third.
Well, because INBA is, and this is why the honesty about this needs to be spoken about, because that's what competitors want to know about. They want to know which comps are going to be competitive. And I do think, certainly with the natural federations, you've got ICN and NBA there. You know, I do think that a lot of people end up on ICN stages that might not be ready yet. They just kind of just go in it, because it's one of those shows, whether it is, you know, Sunny Coast or Townsville or States, you will get lots of competitors that, you know, they just want to try out competing. But I certainly think that, you'll get a volume in ICN, and that is, the hype is that there is a ton of people going on stage. But I actually, you know, from my own experience, personally preferred my own personal experience with NBA in that I was in a small group, and that it actually scared me more because I, you know, wasn't on stage next to the same person over and over and over again. So, and look, I think honestly, I'll be competing again with ICN, as I mentioned to you, next year. So anyone listening, you've figured that out already. You know, much of this as well is that competing is, and I think as well in federations, there used to be a lot of abrasiveness between federations, and now it's just kind of like, we're different. We're just different. Some people prefer certain things, and also you can get different things from different federations. But that's why I have these discussions. Just kind of go, what are you good at? What does your federation do really well, and what do your competitors like about you, to give the listeners a chance to make up their own minds as well. So.
I look at it with the difference between federations. You know, there shouldn't be abrasiveness.
No.
I talk to presidents or promoters or whatever they want to call themselves of other federations all the time. Like,
they must think that you guys hate each other, and that's not the case.
And it's not the case. And it's not like, you know, to put a different analogy to it, you know, McDonald's don't get the shits when you go to KFC for dinner one day. You know, they don't, you know, it's just, care. It is what it is. You know, no one's, you know, McDonald's aren't then throwing pickles at you next time you walk in because you went to KFC last time.
Well, you know. and don't get me wrong, I won an overall title with ICN. That was my first show. You know, I competed with them. I won an overall title. I did really well with them. I've had girls win lots of overall titles with ICN, and I actually really like watching that happen. Like, I like being there to watch my clients do really well at any show they choose to go in. I'll always point out differences, and obviously as well, like with the whole experiences, I always say to people, try both. Try the top two.
Especially as a new competitor. Yeah, you should try both. Some people will then go, no, I liked that one better than the other.
Or whether you guys liked that competitor better than another federation, or, you know, I've had girls go in ICN and then go in your show, and they've won an overall in ICN and then not done very well in NBA. And it's like, that though will decide for you what you either need to do to work harder in NBA, or whether you go, you know what, maybe I am best suited to ICN and that's okay.
And it's, that's okay.
I like that. That's really good. Yeah,
like I said, with, you know, judging and how I train judges, I go to other federation shows. You know,
to watch it.
I love the sport, you know, so I'm there to watch the sport, you know, etc. You know, it's not just.
I think too as well, raising your standard a little bit for your judging and everything, and if anything, it kind of does set the bar a bit higher for other federations. It's like, you know, even though they might have done things the same way for a long period of time, and I'm sure that, you know, the likes of IFBB aren't looking at untested federations because, you know, it is what it is. But I think even in the way of, you know, like federations like INBA and Miss Fitness, etc., it's like if there are things that they're struggling with a little bit, maybe it might help to look at NBA and go, what have they been doing? What have they been trying out? You know, what can we move towards, and can we change? Because if we go from that direction of we've always done it this way, so it must always be done this way, unfortunately, we can see that we're not listening to the people that we're serving, that we're helping, and our competitors and coaches.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. So next question,